I'm Jasmine Morgan, 32, and I never thought I'd find myself standing in my own five-star resort with a Caesar salad in hand. The woman at table 7, dripping in diamonds and contempt, looked me up and down as I set the plate before her. "The help doesn't eat with guests," she sneered loudly. I straightened my designer blazer, feeling the eyes of nearby diners. "Good thing I'm not the help," I replied coolly. "I own this resort." Her champagne glass froze midair. If only she knew how many floors I'd scrubbed to get here. "Before I tell you how this all began, where are you watching from? Hit like and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated. Trust me, revenge tastes better than any salad." Growing up in coastal Maine wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. My parents ran Morgan's Cleaning Services, a modest business that kept vacation homes and local businesses spotless. Our own two-bedroom house was small but immaculate. Mom always said, "Clean homes reflect clean values." By 14, I was helping them after school and on weekends, learning the satisfaction of turning chaos into order. Summer people, that's what we called the wealthy families who descended on our town between May and September, treated us like we were invisible. I remember my father's calloused hands and my mother's perpetually raw knuckles from harsh cleaning chemicals. They worked 16-hour days during peak season to make enough money to last through the winter. Yet they never complained, never treated anyone with less than complete respect, regardless of how they were treated in return. "This business may not make us rich," my father would say, "but it teaches you to see the beauty in making things better for others." He was right, though I didn't fully appreciate his wisdom then. When I was 16, I experienced a moment that would stick with me forever. I was helping clean at the Sandpiper Inn, a boutique hotel where the rooms started at $500 a night. I was changing linens when a guest, a woman with a voice like cut glass and a tennis bracelet worth more than our car, walked in. "Oh, you're still here," she said, as if my presence was an inconvenience rather than my job. She turned to her husband and added, loudly enough for me to hear, "These people really should use the service entrance." My cheeks burned with humiliation, but I kept working. That night, I told my parents I wanted more than this. I wanted to be on the other side. Not to treat people poorly, but to create a place where everyone, guests and staff alike, was valued. Through high school, I maintained straight A's while working alongside my parents. My guidance counselor encouraged me to apply to Cornell's School of Hotel Administration. When the acceptance letter came, my parents cried, proud tears mixed with worry about the cost. I worked 3 jobs through college. Morning shifts at a bakery, afternoon administrative work at the department office, and weekend waitressing at an upscale restaurant. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford, but education was an investment I couldn't ignore. During my junior year, I met Ryan Taylor at a hospitality industry mixer. Tall, confident, with a smile that seemed to promise good things, he was the heir to Taylor Resorts, a chain of luxury properties stretching from Florida to California. We started talking about innovations in the industry, and he seemed genuinely impressed by my ideas about sustainable luxury and authentic guest experiences. "Most people just want to copy what's already working," he said. "You're thinking about what could be next." Our romance was fast and intense. He flew me to different Taylor properties on weekends, showing me how the business operated at scale. I was dazzled, not just by him but by the possibilities I saw in each location. I'd point out small improvements, changes to service flow, personal touches that could elevate the guest experience, and he'd listen, really listen. "You see things differently," he told me once as we watched the sunset from the presidential suite at their Miami property. "You could revolutionize this industry." After graduation, he proposed with a ring that made my roommates gasp. Within 6 months, I was Jasmine Taylor, relocating to Florida to join the family business. I was so in love, so excited about our future that I barely noticed the subtle shift in his parents' demeanor after the wedding, how his mother Catherine's smile never quite reached her eyes when she looked at me, how his father James would cut me off mid-sentence during business discussions. "They just need time to get to know you," Ryan assured me. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. But even then, I felt the first tremor of what would eventually become an earthquake in my life. The Taylor mansion in Palm Beach was like something from a magazine, 10,000 square feet of marble, crystal, and old money. My clothes, which had seemed perfectly adequate at Cornell, suddenly felt cheap and inappropriate. Catherine took me shopping within the first week, a gesture I initially mistook for kindness. "We need to make sure you look the part," she said, eyeing my department store blazer with thinly veiled disdain. "The wife of a tailor represents the brand." I threw myself into learning the family business. The Taylors owned 15 luxury resorts across the country, each catering to guests who thought nothing of spending $1,000 a night. I shadowed managers, studied the books, and developed proposals for operational improvements. I was determined to prove I belonged not just as Ryan's wife, but as a valuable part of the company. But every idea I presented at family meetings was politely acknowledged, then quietly shelved. When I suggested implementing a farm-to-table program using local suppliers at their Georgia property, a move that would both reduce costs and appeal to their target demographic, James nodded thoughtfully before changing the subject. 2 weeks later, Ryan presented the exact same idea and was praised for his innovation. When I confronted him privately, he seemed genuinely confused. "Dad probably just needed time to think it through," he said, kissing my forehead like I was a child. "Don't be so sensitive, Jazz." Catherine's microaggressions became a constant background noise in my life. She'd introduce me at charity events with, "This is Jasmine, Ryan's wife. She comes from such a practical background. Her parents are in the cleaning business, isn't that sweet?" Or she'd compliment me with barbs attached, "You look almost sophisticated in that dress, dear. You're adapting so well." Ryan never defended me. In fact, he began to echo his mother's subtle digs, joking about my quaint upbringing or how I still got excited about luxury amenities like a guest seeing them for the first time. 6 months into our marriage, we hosted an important dinner for potential investors. I spent days planning the menu, selecting wines, and ensuring every detail was perfect. As we were greeting guests in the foyer, an elderly gentleman handed me his coat, assuming I was the help. Before I could correct him, Ryan laughed and took the coat from my hands. "Darling, find Maria and have her hang this up, would you?" he said, steering me toward the kitchen with a hand on my lower back. His message was clear: play along, don't embarrass him. That night, as investors discussed expansion opportunities, I offered insights about emerging markets and demographic trends I'd researched. James cut me off mid-sentence. "Let's stick to business, shall we?" he said, as though I'd been discussing the weather rather than revenue projections. The men chuckled, Ryan among them, and the conversation moved on as if I hadn't spoken. In bed that night, I confronted Ryan. "Why didn't you back me up? Those projections were solid." He sighed, not even looking up from his phone. "Jasmine, these guys don't want hotel management theory from someone who's never actually managed a hotel." "I have a degree in hospitality management from Cornell," I reminded him. "And I've been working in this business since I was 14. He finally looked at me, his expression a mixture of pity and annoyance. "Cleaning vacation rentals isn't the same as running luxury resorts. My family has been in this business for generations. Maybe just listen and learn for a while before trying to teach us how to do our jobs." The gulf between us widened. I tried to find my place, to carve out a role for myself, but it was like swimming against a powerful current. Then I discovered I was pregnant, and for a while, hope returned. A baby would cement my place in the family. A child would give me purpose beyond the ornamental role I'd been assigned. Lily was born on a perfect spring morning, 7 pounds, 6 ounces of pure possibility. I held her in my arms and whispered promises about the strong, confident woman she would become. But even this joy was quickly overshadowed by Catherine's domineering presence. In our family, she announced the day after we brought Lily home, "Children have always had proper care from experienced nannies. I've taken the liberty of hiring Mrs. Winters, she raised Ryan and his siblings." I protested, insisting I wanted to be hands-on with my daughter, but Ryan sided with his mother. "You don't know what you're doing, Jazz. Mom is just trying to help." Within weeks, Mrs. Winters was making all decisions about Lily's schedule, feeding, and care, reporting directly to Catherine rather than to me. When I tried to assert myself, I was labeled difficult and ungrateful. I watched my daughter bond with her grandmother and nanny while I was increasingly pushed to the periphery of her life. Meanwhile, Ryan was away more frequently on business trips that seemed to coincide with industry events where his ex-girlfriend Amanda Pierce, now the marketing director for a competing hotel chain, was also in attendance. When I found text messages between them on his phone, he dismissed my concerns as paranoia. "You're being ridiculous," he said. "Amanda and I have known each other forever. We're just colleagues now." But the late-night calls, the lingering perfume on his shirts, and his growing emotional distance told a different story. I was losing my husband, my place in the family, and my connection to my daughter. The dream I had stepped into was revealing itself to be a carefully constructed nightmare. The morning everything changed started normally enough. Ryan had been in Chicago for 3 days at a hospitality conference. I was reviewing resort performance reports in the home office, work that was never officially assigned to me but that I did anyway, desperate to contribute something meaningful. The quarterly numbers for the Taylor's flagship Miami property looked odd. Revenue was down despite record occupancy rates. Expenses were categorized in ways that didn't align with standard accounting practices. I dug deeper, cross-referencing with previous reports, and discovered a pattern of financial discrepancies going back at least 2 years. I was still piecing it together when Ryan's phone call came through on the house line. Except it wasn't Ryan, it was his assistant, apologizing for the confusion. "Mr. Taylor asked me to let you know he's extending his stay in Chicago through the weekend. A situation came up that requires his attention." The situation had a name, Amanda Pierce. I knew because I'd already seen the Instagram post. Ryan and Amanda at a rooftop bar, his arm around her waist, her head thrown back in laughter. It had been posted by a mutual acquaintance and quickly deleted, but not before I'd taken a screenshot. Something inside me snapped. I called the airline and booked the next flight to Chicago. 4 hours later, I was sliding my key card into the door of his hotel suite. The room was dark except for the bathroom light spilling across rumpled bedsheets. I heard laughter, then Amanda's voice, "Babe, did you order champagne?" When I flipped on the lights, the tableau before me burned into my memory, Ryan in a hotel bathrobe, Amanda wrapped in nothing but a sheet, both of their expressions morphing from surprise to something worse, pity. "Jasmine," Ryan recovered quickly, his voice taking on the condescending tone I'd grown to hate. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I held up my phone with the Instagram photo. "Because it looks exactly like what it is." Amanda had the decency to look uncomfortable, gathering her clothes and retreating to the bathroom. Ryan's face hardened. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, as if I was the one who had done something wrong. 3 years, I said, my voice shaking. 3 years I've tried to be good enough for you, for your family. I've swallowed every insult, every dismissal, every time you made me feel small." "Don't be dramatic," he sighed. "This isn't about you." "Then what is it about, Ryan? Explain it to me." He ran a hand through his hair, irritated at being inconvenienced by my pain. "Amanda and I have history. We understand each other. We come from the same world." "And I don't," I finished for him. "Look," he said, his tone softening into something almost cruel in its practiced sympathy. "You should be grateful. Most women would kill for the life you have. The clothes, the houses, the status. The cheating husband? The mother-in-law from hell? Being treated like an accessory rather than a person?" His expression hardened. "You knew who we were when you married me. The Taylors have a certain way of doing things." "Including embezzling from your own company?" I asked, watching his face carefully. The flash of panic in his eyes confirmed my suspicions before he masked it with confusion. "What are you talking about?" "The Miami property. The mysterious expenses. The revenue that disappears between gross and net. I saw the reports, Ryan." He was across the room in 2 strides, gripping my arms too tightly. "You're imagining things. Those reports are complex, way beyond what you'd understand with your limited experience." I wrenched away from him. "I understand enough to know something's wrong. Does your father know what you're doing?" A cold smile spread across his face. "Who do you think taught me?" I left Chicago with my world in pieces. Back in Palm Beach, I began gathering evidence, downloading financial records and emails from Ryan's computer when he wasn't home. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the information, but I needed leverage, protection. 3 days later, Catherine summoned me to the main house for a family meeting. Ryan was there, along with James and their family attorney, Howard Jennings. The atmosphere was frigid. "Jasmine," James began, his voice deceptively calm, "Ryan tells us you've been accessing confidential company information." "Information I had every right to see as Ryan's wife and a family member," I countered. Catherine's laugh was like ice cracking. "Family member? My dear, you were never family. You were a phase Ryan needed to get through, the charity case, the girl from the wrong side of the tracks. We tolerated it because we assumed he'd tire of you eventually. Ryan wouldn't meet my eyes. The coward." Howard slid a document across the table. "This is a separation agreement. It's quite generous. You'll receive a one-time payment of $100,000 in exchange for your silence about any family or company matters." "And if I don't sign?" James leaned forward. "Then we'll be forced to pursue charges for corporate espionage. The evidence will show you accessed confidential information without authorization and attempted to use it for personal gain." "That's not what happened and you know it," I said. "It's what a judge will believe when the Taylor family legal team presents it," Howard replied smoothly. "Your background doesn't exactly scream credibility in these circles." "And what about Lily?" My voice broke on my daughter's name. Catherine's smile was victorious. "Lily will remain with her father, where she belongs. The courts generally prefer children to stay in stable, financially secure environments." "A single mother with no job history, fighting criminal charges? I don't like your chances." They had me cornered, and they knew it. I signed the papers with tears blurring my vision, thinking of Lily upstairs with Mrs. Winters, unaware that her mother was being erased from her life. I was given 24 hours to pack personal items and leave. Catherine supervised as I filled 2 suitcases with clothes, only what I had brought into the marriage, nothing purchased with Taylor money. Family photos with Lily were deemed Taylor property. My wedding ring was reclaimed as a family heirloom. The final indignity came as security escorted me out. Ryan appeared briefly in the doorway, Lily in his arms. My daughter reached for me, confused. "Mama go?" she asked, her little face scrunched with worry. Before I could respond, Catherine whisked her away, and Ryan closed the door without a word. That night, in a roadside motel paid for with the emergency cash I kept hidden in my wallet, I hit rock bottom. I had lost everything. My husband, my child, my home, my dignity. The Taylors had taken it all, confident that I would slink away in defeat. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The Greyhound bus to Maine was a 19-hour journey into my past. I watched palm trees give way to pines through smudged windows, each mile carrying me further from Lily but closer to something I had lost in the glamour of Taylor world, myself. My childhood friend Megan Wilson didn't ask questions when I showed up on her doorstep, just pulled me into a hug that smelled like home and herbal tea. Her spare room wasn't much, a twin bed and a dresser with a wobbly drawer, but it was offered with genuine kindness, something I hadn't experienced in years. "Stay as long as you need," she said, helping me unpack my meager belongings. "We'll figure it out together." Pride wanted me to refuse, to somehow make it on my own, but practicality won out. I had exactly $843 to my name. The remains of a personal account the Taylors hadn't known about. The $100,000 settlement would come only after a 6-month compliance period, their way of ensuring my silence. Within a week, I had 3 jobs, morning shifts at the Lighthouse Bakery, afternoon reception work at a local inn, and weekend waitressing at the Harborview restaurant. My hands, soft from years of luxury, grew calloused again. My designer clothes hung in Megan's closet, replaced by practical uniforms and comfortable shoes. Each night, I fell into bed exhausted but strangely more alive than I'd felt in years. There was honesty in this work, a straightforward exchange of labor for money that felt clean after the manipulative environment I'd escaped. When I wasn't working, I was planning. The settlement money, if it came, wouldn't be enough to fight for custody of Lily, not against the Taylor fortune. But it could be seed money for something else, something that would give me the standing to eventually reclaim my daughter and my dignity. After 2 months of saving, I reached out to Professor Laura Hayes, my mentor from Cornell. Over video chat, I laid out everything: the marriage, the betrayal, the financial misconduct I'd discovered. "You need leverage," she said, her academics mind cutting straight to the heart of the problem. "And a way to rebuild that plays to your strengths." She introduced me to Alex Rivera, a former student who had become a successful investor in boutique hospitality properties. "He's looking for innovative concepts with solid management behind them," she explained. "And he has no love for the Taylor empire, they undercut him in a deal years ago." Alex agreed to meet me for coffee during his next trip to Boston. I spent weeks preparing, developing a business plan for a new kind of luxury resort. One that would combine the exclusivity wealthy clients expected with the authenticity and personal connection they secretly craved. On the day of our meeting, I took the bus to Boston, wearing the one designer outfit I'd kept, a navy blue suit that had always made me feel confident. Alex was younger than I expected, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Professor Hayes speaks highly of you," he began, "but I need to be convinced your concept isn't just another boutique hotel in a saturated market." For the next hour, I outlined my vision: a resort that honored its location rather than imposing upon it, that employed local artisans and sourced from local producers, that offered exclusive experiences connecting guests to the authentic culture of coastal Maine. I showed him projected financials, marketing strategies, and operational plans. "This is compelling," he admitted, "but why should I believe you can execute it? Running a cleaning service and working in hotels isn't the same as owning and operating a luxury property." I met his gaze steadily. "Because I've seen exactly how the best and worst in this industry operate. I've learned from both. And because I have absolutely everything to prove." He didn't commit that day, but he didn't say no either. "Refine the concept," he advised. "Find a potential property. Show me this isn't just talk." Back in Maine, I added research to my already packed schedule. I explored abandoned properties along the coast, properties with good bones but in need of vision. That's when I found it, the old Morgan Point estate, a once grand summer home built in the 1920s, sitting on 10 acres of oceanfront property with stunning views. It had been on the market for years, its price dropping as maintenance issues mounted. The synchronicity of the name felt like a sign. I arranged a tour with the realtor, walking through rooms with peeling wallpaper and water-damaged ceilings, but seeing only possibility. The location was unbeatable. The structure, despite its problems, was sound. With the right investment, it could become exactly what I had envisioned. I took hundreds of photos, created detailed renovation plans, and revised my business proposal. When I presented it to Alex 3 weeks later, his eyes lit up. "This has potential," he admitted. "But the asking price is still $3 million, even in its condition. My investment group typically puts in half the capital for a promising venture. You'd need to raise the rest." I had anticipated this. "I have some personal funds coming," I said, referring to the settlement. "And I've identified several local investors who might come in at smaller amounts. They understand what this property could mean for the region's economy." What I didn't tell him was that these local investors were still theoretical. I would need to convince business owners who knew me only as the daughter of cleaning people to trust me with substantial sums of money. The next 3 months were a blur of pitches, rejections, small victories, and setbacks. I spoke to every business owner in a 50-mile radius who might have capital to invest. Most declined politely. Some laughed outright at my audacity. A few, very few, took a chance with small investments. Meanwhile, the settlement money came through. The Taylors, confident I was no longer a threat, transferred the funds with a final warning letter from their attorney reiterating the confidentiality agreement. I immediately put every penny towards securing the property. By the time winter descended on Maine, I had raised enough, just barely, to move forward with Alex's investment group. We closed on the property on a snowy December morning, the keys to Morgan Point estate cold and heavy in my palm. That night, standing alone in what would become the grand entrance hall, illuminated only by construction lights and the glow of my phone, I allowed myself to cry for the first time since leaving Florida. They were not tears of defeat but of determination. The road ahead would be difficult, but it was mine. I scrolled through my phone to a photo of Lily, the only one I had managed to keep. She would be 4 now, probably barely remembering me. "I'm coming back for you," I whispered to her image. "But first, I need to become someone even the Taylors can't ignore." 1 year into renovation, Morgan Point Estate was beginning to reclaim its former glory, and then some. What had once been a private mansion was transforming into an exclusive resort with 12 uniquely designed suites, a farm-to-table restaurant showcasing Maine's bounty, and experiences that connected guests with local culture and natural beauty. I had relocated to the property, living in what would eventually become the manager's cottage but was currently little more than a construction site with a functioning bathroom. Every penny went into the resort, personal comfort could wait. The work was all-consuming. I was on site from dawn until well past dusk, overseeing contractors, sourcing materials, hiring staff, and developing operational systems. When sleep came, it was deep and dreamless, my body too exhausted for nightmares about what I'd lost. Local attitudes were shifting. Initially skeptical of an outsider development, never mind that I'd grown up just 30 miles away. The community was warming to my approach. I hired locally whenever possible. I sourced materials from regional suppliers. I consulted with town elders about preserving the property's historical character while bringing it into the modern era. "You're not doing it the way those big hotel chains would," observed Frank Dawson, whose family had been fishing these waters for generations and who now supplied our restaurant with daily catches. "You're doing it right." The first glimmer of national attention came unexpectedly. A travel writer for Coastal Living happened to be visiting family in the area and became intrigued by the renovation. Her feature, Maine's Hidden Gem, The Rebirth of Morgan Point, highlighted our commitment to authentic luxury and local connection. The article caught the attention of Emily Chen, a producer for the travel show Hidden Escapes, who contacted me about featuring the property in an upcoming episode about New England destinations. "We're looking for places that tell a story," she explained during our initial call. "Places with heart behind the luxury." The segment aired 3 months before our scheduled opening, generating a wave of interest and pre-bookings that exceeded our most optimistic projections. Suddenly, Morgan Cove Resort and Spa, the name I'd chosen to honor both my family and the property's setting, was on the radar of luxury travelers seeking authentic experiences. It was after the show aired that I received the call that changed everything. I was reviewing fabric samples for the main restaurant when my phone rang, an unknown Florida number. "Jasmine? It's Michael Drummond. We met at the Taylor Resort's charity gala a few years ago. I was on their board until recently." My heart raced, but I kept my voice neutral. "I remember. What can I do for you, Michael? I saw you on Hidden Escapes. Impressive work." He paused. "But that's not why I'm calling. There are things happening with the Taylor organization you should know about." Over the next 30 minutes, Michael outlined what he called a slow-motion train wreck. After my departure, Ryan had taken complete control of the company's financial operations. His mismanagement, combined with extravagant personal spending, had driven several properties into serious debt. The family was leveraging assets to cover losses, selling properties at below-market rates to generate quick cash. "James had a stroke 6 months ago," Michael continued. "He's out of the picture. Catherine is in denial. And Ryan, well, Ryan's making decisions that have most of the board ready to jump ship." Why tell me this? I asked, though I already knew. Because some of us remember how you tried to flag irregularities before you left. We should have listened. He hesitated. And because rumor has it the feds are starting to ask questions about certain financial transactions. When that happens, people like Ryan look for someone else to blame. After we hung up, I sat motionless, fabric samples forgotten. Ryan had always been careless, cutting corners and expecting others to clean up his messes. But this was different. This was the collapse of a dynasty, and potentially the perfect opportunity for me to reclaim what was mine. That night, I made a decision that crossed a line I'd previously been unwilling to traverse. I had kept copies of the financial documents I'd discovered before leaving, documents that clearly showed Ryan's embezzlement. I had never used them, bound by both the settlement agreement and my own ethical boundaries. Now, using an anonymous email account and a VPN to mask my location, I sent selected documents to the Financial Crimes Division of the FBI with a simple message: you might want to look into this. More evidence available upon request. It was both justice and revenge, a dangerous combination that left me sleepless but resolute. With opening day approaching, I pushed thoughts of the Taylors aside and focused on final preparations. Our staff, many of them locals who had never worked in luxury hospitality, underwent intensive training. I personally walked through each guest room, testing every feature, adjusting every detail until it met my exacting standards. The resort was a physical manifestation of everything I believed about hospitality, that true luxury came from authenticity, that exceptional service flowed from genuine care, that environments should enhance rather than dominate their natural settings. 2 weeks before opening, disaster struck. I was in the middle of a final walkthrough with our executive chef when my phone rang. It was Alex, his usually calm voice tight with concern. "Jasmine, we have a problem. Summit Partners just pulled their investment." Summit Partners was our largest outside investor after Alex's group, accounting for nearly 20% of our capital. Without their funds, we wouldn't be able to complete final preparations or meet operating expenses until revenue started flowing. What happened? I asked, already moving toward my office. They claim market conditions have changed, but that's bullshit. Someone got to them. His voice lowered. Word is it was the Taylors. They're on some kind of acquisition spree, buying up distressed properties. My guess is they want Morgan Cove to fail so they can swoop in and take it for pennies on the dollar. The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Even as their empire crumbled, the Taylors were still trying to destroy what I was building. "We need to find replacement funding," I said, mind racing. "And we need it fast." "In 2 weeks? For this amount?" "Jasmine, be realistic." But I was already formulating a plan, an unconventional, potentially disastrous plan that would either save Morgan Cove or sink it completely. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting of all staff, local suppliers, and the small community investors who had taken a chance on me early on. Standing before them in the half-finished main restaurant, I laid out our situation with complete transparency. Summit Partners has withdrawn their investment, likely due to pressure from a competing hotel group, I explained, avoiding mentioning the Taylors by name. Without those funds, we may not be able to open as scheduled. Murmurs of concern rippled through the room. These people had invested time, resources, and hope in Morgan Cove. For many local vendors and staff, the resort represented significant income they had been counting on. "I'm not giving up," I continued, "and I'm not asking you to either. What I am proposing is a community investment structure. Everyone in this room has a stake in Morgan Cove's success. I'm offering you the opportunity to make that stake official." Over the next 2 hours, I outlined a plan for local suppliers to convert a portion of their first year's contracts into equity, for staff to accept partial payment in profit sharing, and for existing investors to connect me with others who might participate in an emergency funding round. "This is highly unusual," admitted Derek Porter, our legal advisor, when the meeting ended. "But if it works, it would create a resort with deeper community ties than any luxury property I've ever seen." If it works became our mantra over the next 10 days as I met with local banks, business owners, and potential investors from Portland to Bar Harbor. I slept in my car between meetings, pitched until my voice gave out, and refused to entertain the possibility of failure. 3 days before our scheduled opening, we secured the last piece of financing. A bridge loan from a regional development fund, approved after the town council unanimously endorsed our application, citing Morgan Cove's positive economic impact on the area. We would open on schedule, not as the venture I had originally envisioned, but as something potentially more powerful, a luxury resort with an entire community invested in its success. The night before opening, I stood on the bluff overlooking the cove for which the resort was named, watching the moonlight silver the water. From this vantage point, I could see the entire property, the restored main building with its grand white columns, the individual cottages nestled among pine trees, the wooden path winding down to our private beach. It was beautiful. It was mine. And it was ready. Opening day dawned clear and perfect, as if Maine itself was celebrating with us. Staff arrived early, dressed in their custom uniforms, navy blue with subtle gold accents, designed to be elegant but approachable. In the kitchen, Chef Isabel Martin directed her team as they prepared for our first dinner service. At the front desk, Megan, now our guest relations manager, arranged welcome packages personalized for each arriving guest. I wore a simple white dress that contrasted with my sunbrowned skin, my hair pulled back in a low chignon. Professional but accessible, exactly the image I wanted to project as the owner of Morgan Cove. Our first guests began arriving at noon. I greeted each one personally, learning names, preferences, and the stories that had brought them to our door. Many mentioned the Hidden Escapes segment. Others had read about us in travel magazines or heard through word of mouth. All seemed genuinely excited to be part of our opening weekend. By evening, the resort was humming with activity. The restaurant, which we'd named Tidewater, was fully booked. The Maine-inspired cocktails created by our mixologist flowed freely. The locally sourced menu highlighted the best of coastal cuisine. From my vantage point near the entrance, I watched guests' faces as they experienced what we had created, the genuine smiles, the appreciative murmurs, the relaxed shoulders of people feeling truly welcomed. It was everything I had envisioned. Everything I had worked for. The first month exceeded all projections. Guests checked out only to immediately book return visits. Review sites exploded with 5-star ratings. Industry publications began requesting interviews and features. By the end of our first quarter, Morgan Cove had established itself as the premier luxury destination in New England. Our occupancy rates remained at 98% even as we moved into what traditionally would have been shoulder season. Our waiting list for peak summer dates stretched into the following year. I was in my office reviewing applications for additional staff when Megan knocked on my door, her expression uncharacteristically tense. "There's a reservation request you need to see," she said, placing a tablet in front of me. The name on the screen made my blood run cold. Taylor, Ryan, party of 3. Requested dates, 2 weeks from now, for a 4-night stay in our premium oceanfront cottage. Special requests included champagne on arrival and a private dining experience. Notes indicated it would be a family trip including spouse and child. My first instinct was to decline the reservation. Morgan Cove was fully booked months in advance. I could easily claim no availability. But something stopped me, perhaps the same instinct that had driven me to rebuild my life from nothing. "Accept it," I told Megan, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "But assign them to Cottage 8, not the oceanfront." Cottage 8 was beautiful but had a partial rather than full ocean view. It was a small act of defiance, a tiny flex of the power I now held. Megan raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure you want them here at all?" "I'm sure." I met her concerned gaze. "It's time." The 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation, not just for the resort, which continued to operate at peak efficiency, but for myself. I worked with a therapist to develop coping strategies for the inevitable confrontation. I consulted with my attorney about potential legal implications. I reviewed the settlement agreement, confirming that its confidentiality provisions expired after 1 year. Most importantly, I reminded myself daily of how far I had come, of the strength I had discovered within myself, of the business I had built that was already changing the hospitality landscape. The Taylors arrived on a Friday afternoon in early October. The trees were just beginning to turn, painting the coastline in fiery oranges and reds against the deep blue of the Atlantic. I watched from my office window as their black Range Rover pulled into the circular drive. Ryan emerged first, looking older than when I'd last seen him. New lines around his eyes, a slight softening of his once athletic frame. Catherine followed, her posture still imperious despite the stress evident on her face. And then, my heart stopped. Lily. At 6 years old, she was no longer the toddler I remembered. Taller, her dark hair longer, her features more defined. But her eyes were the same, curious, intelligent, taking in everything around her. She held Catherine's hand, dressed in what I recognized as the Taylor family's idea of casual vacation wear, designer jeans, a cashmere sweater, and small leather boots that probably cost more than what most of my staff earned in a week. I had planned to let them check in normally, to wait until they were settled before making my presence known. But seeing Lily, my daughter, who had no idea who I was, shattered that resolve. I made my way downstairs and across the lobby, timing my arrival at the front desk to coincide with theirs. Ryan was speaking with the receptionist, his back to me, while Catherine surveyed the space with critical eyes and Lily fidgeted beside her. "Welcome to Morgan Cove," I said, my voice calm despite the earthquake inside me. Ryan froze, then turned slowly. The shock on his face would have been comical in any other circumstance. "Jasmine?" He looked from me to the receptionist, confusion evident. "What are you doing here?" "I own this resort, Ryan." I allowed myself a small smile. "All of it?" Catherine's gasp was audible. Lily looked between the adults, sensing tension but not understanding its source. "That's impossible," Catherine said, her voice pitched low but intense. "You couldn't possibly have built a multi-million-dollar luxury resort that's already being featured in Condé Nast Traveler?" I finished for her. "And yet, here we are." Ryan had recovered enough to attempt damage control. "What a surprise," he managed, his smile not reaching his eyes. "You've done well for yourself." "I have," I agreed. "Your suite is ready. Emma will show you to Cottage 8. I hope you enjoy your stay." I turned to leave, maintaining the professional demeanor I had practiced for days, when Lily's voice stopped me. "You're pretty," she said simply, looking up at me with no recognition, just the straightforward assessment of a child. Every carefully constructed wall threatened to crumble. I crouched to her eye level, careful to maintain an appropriate distance. "Thank you. You're pretty too." "I'm Jasmine Morgan. I own this resort." "I'm Lily Taylor," she replied with the practiced politeness of a child who had been drilled in social niceties. "I'm 6. It's very nice to meet you, Lily Taylor, who is 6. I smiled, fighting back tears. "I hope you find lots of adventure here." Catherine stepped between us, her hand firmly on Lily's shoulder. "That's enough, Lily. We don't want to bother the owner." The way she said owner contained multitudes, disbelief, disdain, and something else, fear. Good, I thought. She should be afraid. The next 2 days passed in a strange dance of avoidance and surveillance. The Taylors participated in resort activities, dined in our restaurant, and explored the grounds, while I monitored their movements from a distance, ensuring they received impeccable service while minimizing direct contact. On their third evening, the inevitable confrontation arrived. I was hosting a wine tasting for guests in our cellar when the Taylors appeared, Ryan and Catherine only, Lily presumably with the nanny they had brought along. Ryan's eyes locked with mine across the room as I discussed the merits of a local vineyard's Cabernet Franc. I completed my presentation, invited guests to continue sampling, then made my way to where the Taylors stood examining a bottle with exaggerated interest. "Enjoying your stay?" I asked pleasantly. Cut the act, Jasmine, Ryan said quietly. What is this? Some elaborate revenge fantasy? I laughed, a genuine, full-throated laugh that turned heads. Ryan, not everything is about you. Morgan Cove exists because I saw an opportunity and had the vision to execute it. The fact that you're uncomfortable with my success says more about you than it does about me. Catherine's perfectly controlled features tightened. Success? Let's be realistic about what's happening here. You've managed to open a boutique hotel. It's quaint. But let's not pretend it puts you in our league. Your league? I raised an eyebrow. The league that's currently under federal investigation for financial irregularities? That league? The blood drained from Ryan's face. You broke the confidentiality agreement, he hissed. You'll regret that. The agreement expired a year ago, I corrected him. But more importantly, I never needed to say a word. Your own mismanagement did all the talking necessary. Before he could respond, the cellar door opened and a staff member appeared. Ms. Morgan? There's a situation in the dining room that requires your attention. I excused myself, feeling their eyes boring into my back as I left. The situation turned out to be minor, a guest with dietary restrictions concerned about cross-contamination, but by the time I returned to the cellar, the Taylors had gone. Later that night, as I was finishing paperwork in my office, there was a knock at the door. I expected it to be Megan or perhaps Chef Isabel with a question about the next day's menu. Instead, Ryan stood there, alone. May I come in? He asked, his tone conciliatory. Against my better judgment, I nodded. He took the seat across from my desk, looking around at the tastefully appointed office with its magnificent ocean view. You've built something impressive here, he admitted after a moment. I underestimated you. You and your entire family made a career of underestimating me, I replied coolly. He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache despite everything. Things aren't good, Jazz. The company's in trouble. Dad's health is failing. The feds are asking questions I can't answer. That sounds like a you problem. It could be a solution, he countered, leaning forward earnestly. Morgan Cove is exactly the kind of property we need in our portfolio right now, authentic, experience-driven, getting the right kind of attention. We could merge operations. You'd have resources beyond what you can access now. Lily would have her mother back. And there it was, the card he knew I couldn't ignore. Lily. You'd use our daughter as a bargaining chip? I kept my voice level despite the rage building inside me. I'm trying to rebuild our family, he insisted. I made mistakes. I know that. But we could start over, stronger, better. You, me, Lily. The three of us. For a brief, weak moment, I imagined it, the family I had lost, restored. But then I remembered everything that had come before and everything I had built since. No, I said simply. Morgan Cove isn't for sale. And neither am I. His expression hardened. Catherine was right about you. You never understood how our world works. I understand perfectly, I replied. I just refuse to play by rules designed to keep people like me in our place. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a resort to run. He left without another word, but the confrontation was far from over. The next evening was clear and cool, perfect for the outdoor seafood banquet we had planned on the terrace overlooking the cove. White lights twinkled in the trees surrounding the space. A string quartet played quietly in the corner. Staff circulated with trays of local oysters and champagne as guests mingled before dinner. I wore a midnight blue gown that complemented the setting, moving among guests, ensuring everyone felt personally welcomed. It was during one such circuit that I encountered the woman who would unknowingly set the final act in motion. Stephanie Brooks was new money. Tech industry wealth worn with the self-conscious ostentation of someone still insecure in their status. Her husband had made a fortune developing apps, and she had made an art form of spending it. Tonight she dripped in diamonds, her voice carrying across the terrace as she loudly assessed everything from the champagne, acceptable, to the view, I suppose it's charming in a rustic way. I was placing a Caesar salad before her, stepping in for a server who had been called away to handle another matter, when she looked up, her gaze dismissive as it swept over me. "The help doesn't eat with the guests," she sneered, loud enough for nearby diners to hear. The terrace fell silent. Even the quartet seemed to hesitate in their playing. From the corner of my eye, I saw Ryan and Catherine at a nearby table, Lily thankfully absent, likely already in bed. I straightened, adjusting my designer gown, and smiled with all the warmth of an Arctic winter. "Good thing I'm not the help," I replied evenly. "I own this resort." Stephanie's champagne glass froze midair, her expression morphing from contempt to mortification. But it was Catherine who rose from her seat, unable to contain herself any longer. "Owns is such a strong word," she said, her voice carrying across the now silent terrace. "Temporarily manages might be more accurate. After all, how long can this little experiment possibly last?" Ryan placed a restraining hand on his mother's arm, but she shook it off, years of resentment and recent humiliation propelling her forward. "Do you know who this woman is?" she asked the assembled guests, gesturing toward me dramatically. "This is my former daughter-in-law. The daughter of cleaners. The help, indeed. She married my son for his money, and when that didn't work out, she took her settlement and played hotelier." A murmur ran through the crowd. Staff froze, uncertain how to proceed. I remained perfectly still, allowing Catherine to dig her own grave. "Mother," Ryan warned, standing now. "That's enough." "It's never enough for people like her," Catherine continued, her voice rising. "They want what we have, what we've built over generations, but they don't understand the responsibilities that come with it. The standards. The traditions. The fraud?" I suggested quietly. "The embezzlement? The tax evasion?" Catherine's face contorted. "How dare you? How dare I speak the truth?" I stepped forward, my calm a stark contrast to her growing hysteria. "How dare I build something honest and successful after your family tried to destroy me? How dare I refuse to be erased?" Ryan moved between us. "Jasmine, please. Not here." "Why not here, Ryan? Aren't these your people? The elite circles you were so desperate for me to impress?" I gestured to the guests, many of whom were watching with undisguised fascination. Should they not know exactly who they're dining with? A small voice cut through the tension. "Daddy?" Lily stood at the entrance to the terrace, her nanny hovering anxiously behind her. She looked confused, her eyes darting between the adults locked in confrontation. Catherine immediately switched tactics, her voice honeyed with false concern. "Look what you've done now. Upsetting a child." Lily approached cautiously, stopping beside Ryan. "Why is everyone fighting?" Before anyone could answer, a new voice entered the fray. "Mr. Taylor?" Two men in suits stood at the terrace entrance, their expressions grave. "Ryan Taylor?" the taller one repeated, approaching our group. Ryan's face drained of color. "Yes?" The man produced a badge. "Special Agent Pearson, FBI. This is Special Agent Ramirez. We need to speak with you regarding certain financial transactions associated with Taylor Resorts." The terrace erupted in whispers. Catherine swayed slightly, gripping the back of a chair for support. "Now?" Ryan asked, his voice strangled. "Can't this wait until?" "I'm afraid not, sir." Agent Pearson's gaze flicked to Lily, then back to Ryan. "We can do this quietly, or we can make it official right here. Your choice." Ryan looked at his daughter, then at me. Something passed between us, a recognition, perhaps, of how completely the tables had turned. "I'll come with you," he said quietly. "Mother, take Lily back to the cottage." Catherine stood frozen, years of carefully constructed superiority crumbling around her. "This is your fault," she hissed at me. "You did this." "No, Catherine," I replied softly. you did this. All of you. I just refuse to be your victim. As the agents escorted Ryan away, Lily broke from Catherine's grip and ran to me, stopping just short of contact. She looked up, her eyes, so like mine, full of confusion and a dawning recognition. Are you my mom? She asked directly, with a child's unerring instinct for truth. The terrace, the resort, the years of struggle, everything fell away. There was only this moment, this question, this child who deserved honesty after years of lies. I knelt to her level. Yes, Lily. I am your mom. She studied my face carefully. Grandma said you didn't want me. That was never true, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. Not for a single moment. I have wanted you and loved you every day since you were born. Catherine moved to intervene, but a look from me, the look of a woman who had reclaimed her power, stopped her cold. Why didn't you come see me? Lily asked. It's complicated, I answered honestly. But I'm here now. And if you want, we can talk about it. Not tonight, but soon. She nodded solemnly, then, without warning, wrapped her arms around my neck in a quick, fierce hug that nearly undid me completely. As she pulled away, she whispered, I like your hotel. Through tears, I managed a smile. Thank you. I built it for you. 6 months passed in a blur of change and growth. Morgan Cove expanded operations to include a winter program that proved surprisingly popular, featuring cozy firelit evenings, storm-watching packages, and seasonal cuisine that showcased Maine's colder months as beautifully as our summer offerings had highlighted its warmer ones. Industry recognition poured in. Travel Plus Leisure named us Hotel of the Year. Condé Nast Traveler featured us in their hot list. The Wall Street Journal profiled our unique community investment structure as a potential model for sustainable luxury development. But the most significant changes were personal. Ryan's legal troubles mounted as the federal investigation uncovered years of financial misconduct throughout the Taylor organization. He eventually accepted a plea deal that included restitution, a substantial fine, and a 2-year sentence in a minimum security facility. The Taylor empire didn't collapse entirely, but it contracted significantly, selling off properties to cover debts and legal costs. More importantly for me, the custody arrangement for Lily was completely renegotiated. After initially fighting any change, Catherine eventually conceded that her granddaughter deserved a relationship with her mother. Lily now spent school vacations and 1 weekend each month at Morgan Cove, with plans to extend that time as she grew older. Our relationship developed slowly, carefully. She was cautious at first, full of questions I answered as honestly as age-appropriate boundaries allowed. We discovered shared interests, a love of the ocean, a tendency to laugh at the same silly jokes, an appreciation for animals of all kinds. I created a room for her in my cottage that she could decorate however she wished, making it clear this was her space, always. On a crisp October evening, 1 year after the confrontation that had changed everything, I stood at the podium in Boston's Grand Ballroom, accepting the New England Hospitality Association's Innovator of the Year award. The audience, filled with industry leaders and investors, applauded as I approached the microphone. Thank you, I began, scanning the friendly faces before me. This recognition means more than I can express, not just for me but for the entire Morgan Cove team and the community that made our vision possible. I spoke about our unique approach to luxury hospitality, our commitment to authenticity and connection, and the amazing staff who brought it all to life every day. What I didn't mention was the journey that had led me there, the humiliation, the loss, the rebuilding from nothing. As I concluded my remarks and returned to my table, where Megan and Alex waited with champagne and congratulations, I noticed a figure at the back of the room. Catherine Taylor stood alone, watching the celebration with an unreadable expression. Later, as guests mingled during the reception, she approached my small group. She looked older, the events of the past year evident in new lines around her eyes and mouth. Jasmine, she said simply, no warmth in her voice but none of the previous venom either. Congratulations on your award. Thank you, Catherine, I replied, equally neutral. I'm surprised to see you here. She glanced around at the crowded room, at the people who now treated me as a peer rather than an interloper. I wanted to see it for myself, she admitted. What you've built. And? A flicker of something, respect, perhaps, or simply resignation, crossed her face. It's impressive. More than I expected. Coming from Catherine, this was tantamount to effusive praise. We stood in awkward silence for a moment before she continued. Lily talks about you constantly, she said, a hint of bitterness still evident. The things you do together, the plans you make. She's happy when she returns from her visits. She's an amazing child, I said simply. She deserves every happiness. Catherine nodded stiffly. Yes, well. That's partly why I came tonight. Ryan will be away for some time. I'm not as young as I once was. Lily needs stability. I waited, sensing there was more. I thought perhaps we could adjust the custody arrangement, she continued, each word clearly costing her. Perhaps she could spend more time at your resort. During the school year, I mean. If you were amenable. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even particularly gracious. But coming from Catherine Taylor, it was a seismic shift, an acknowledgement, however grudging, that I was a fit mother for my child. I would like that very much, I replied, keeping my tone measured despite the joy exploding inside me. We can have our lawyers work out the details. She nodded once, sharply, then turned to leave before pausing. You did well, she said, not looking back. After everything. You did well. Then she was gone, swallowed by the crowd, leaving me to absorb what had just happened. 6 months later, I stood in the dining room of Morgan Cove, the very spot where Stephanie Brooks had dismissed me as the help, watching as Lily carefully arranged flowers for the tables. At 7, she was already showing an interest in the hospitality business, shadowing different staff members during her increasingly frequent visits. Is this good, Mom? She asked, stepping back to assess her handiwork. It's perfect, I told her truthfully. You have a natural eye for this. She beamed at the praise. Maybe when I grow up, I can help you run this place. Maybe you can, I agreed, my heart full. Or maybe you'll build something all your own. Either way, I'll be right there supporting you. As we finished preparing the dining room for the evening service, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. From cleaning vacation homes to owning one of the most acclaimed resorts on the East Coast. From losing everything to gaining a life beyond what I had ever imagined possible. The path had not been easy or straight. It had required sacrifice, perseverance, and a willingness to rebuild from ashes. But standing here now, watching my daughter arrange flowers with the same careful attention to detail I had once applied to cleaning rooms, I knew with absolute certainty that every step had been worth taking. I was no longer the help. I was no longer Ryan Taylor's wife or Catherine Taylor's charity case. I was Jasmine Morgan, owner of Morgan Cove Resort and Spa, mother to Lily, architect of my own destiny. And that was worth more than all the Taylor millions combined. Have you ever been underestimated or faced a situation where you had to completely rebuild your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my journey resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the people who try to tear you down are actually clearing the way for you to build something better. Thank you for watching, and I hope my story gives you strength for whatever challenges you're facing.